I don't think it will come as a surprise to anybody who has subscribed to my channel purely for the Final Fantasy XIV content that I don't spend a huge amount of time playing the game's content. At least not at maximum level. I don't get, Dark Knight up to 80 and then just main that and do every single thing in the game on that. I'm very much a person that enjoys the leveling process. I like trying out all of the different character types, the different jobs, the different roles, to the extent that if you take a look at my character pane, you'll see that I've got a fair few jobs leveled up at 80. Not all of them, but definitely all of the tanks and all of the healers, as well as most of the casters. I do need to start leveling Blue Mage a bit, and obviously I'm working on Bard and Machinist bit by bit as we go. I've also finally started leveling Monk. But one thing that I do like to do whenever a new class comes out, a new job comes out, I take a look at, well, what does my current muscle memory in a particular role allow me to do? So for example, I started out my journey as a paladin back in A Realm Reborn, and I played as paladin rather than warrior. I wasn't a huge fan of warrior. I played as a paladin all the way up until Heaven's Ward, where of course I swapped over to Dark Knight and pretty much played that as my tank of choice ever since, and the first job that I level up ever since. Now, Dark Knight's undergone a fair few changes, admittedly, during that time, but the initial swap over, I basically looked at Paladin and said, okay, so in this slot and this slot and this slot, I've got these abilities. These are where my combos go. This is the movement that my fingers are used to going. How can I translate that over to Dark Knight? So you'll see that the AoE for Paladin is in the same place as the AoE for Dark Knight, and so on and so forth. And the same goes for the healer jobs. I started off on Scholar, actually. I didn't start off on White Mage, and I looked at where all the different Scholar abilities go, and then when I did swap over to White Mage, or to an extent Astrologian, I made sure that the abilities lined up in a way that made sense to me, so that I could just leap into content without having to really fat finger too much stuff. I did, however, read all of the tooltips. I'm not one of these people that just ignores the tooltips and says, oh, I'll figure things out as they go. So this video is going to do two things realistically. It's going to be me taking a quick look at the Scholar abilities, because I'm going to be doing a deep dive into the Sage stuff, and I just want to see, well, this is where this kind of ability is going to want to go for it to make sense with my Sage versus Scholar, the two barrier healers. So we've got single target heal, we've got single target heal with shield, we've got AoE heal / shield, though realistically shield on Scholar. We've got our bubble ability, we've got a Suno, we've got a single target instant cast heal that uses a resource. We've got XCOG, which is a 45-second buff that we place on the tank that keeps them safe. We've got Whispering Dawn, which is an AoE instant cast regen on a 60-second cooldown. We've got Indomitability, which is a 30-second 400 potency AoE heal, which again uses our resource. We've got Etherflow, which gives us our resource back every 60 seconds. Can only be used in combat, which I've always thought was a bit of an odd change. We've got Emergency Tactics, which is a nice short 15-second self-buff that turns our next shield spell into a pure healing spell. We've got Ether Pact, which allows us to tether our fairy and use this second resource to give a really kind of hefty regen effect, essentially, to one character, one target of our choice, at the expense of the fairy no longer healing the person with the lowest HP constantly and locking us out of using other abilities. Well, no, it doesn't lock us out of other abilities. It just means that we can't... that cancels the ether pad when they're done. We've got our dot. We've got our single target nuke. We've got our AoE ability. We've got our instant cast nuke, and we've got some other bits and pieces kind of dotted around. You know, summon the Seraph version of the fairy, use the Seraph's AoE barrier, unleash the fairy's AoE heal, a basic energy drain ability to dump ether flow should we have the stacks. We've got a buff that increases our healing done. We've got an ability to spread the shield effect of our Adlo to other people. We've got Dissipation, which gets rid of our fairy for a bit, gives us a 20% healing magic potency boost and a full stack of ether flow, and then, you know, they come back after 30 seconds. And we've also got Chain Stratagem, increases crit hits by 10% for 15 seconds, and the ability to place our things where we want, plus of course a raise and a summon. So I'm going to go through the new, potentially outdated even by the time I'm recording this video, the new Sage tooltips and see, okay, where can I put these? This will be the first time I've actually read these tooltips properly. I have watched a couple of media tour videos on Sage, but they go over the information so quickly, and it was over a month ago, I think, at the time of recording this, that I just want to really take a deep dive in it and plan out, well, what am I going to do for Sage? Where are things going to go? If this doesn't sound like the type of video that you're interested in, that's fine. It probably doesn't sound like the type of video I'd be interested in either. It's kind of basically for me to get my head around the jobs, or the new job. So, join me as we take this little journey into tooltip land together. So, we're going to start off with the level 1 spell. So this is Dosis, which deals unaspected damage with a potency of 240. Restores HP to targets under the effects of Cardian granted by you. So this is going to be our main cast spell, but if one of our allies has got Cardian, so that's going to be a buff that we put on people, it's going to heal them as well. So it is, yeah, I mean, that's going to go on control 3. Depending on how often we cast it, I mean, it depends whether we have a dot as well. If we have a dot, then the dot will go control 1 and this will go control 3. If we don't have a dot, this might just end up as control 1. We'll have to see. But that's our basic first ever spell. Let's take a look at the next one. So Diagnosis, level 2, is our basic heal. So that's going to go there. I'll make a macro for it for Diagnosis. Again, it will depend on the actual balance of how often we use these things. That's roughly where that is going to go. So this is going to be on 1. This is going to be on control 3. And here's Cardia. So grant self the effect of Cardia and a selected party member or self the effect of Cardian, restoring HP after casting certain magic attacks. So this is a buff, a permanent buff, a bond buff, as I like to call them on rare occasions. I suspect what I would probably do with this is stick it on a focus target at the start of a dungeon and probably not worry about it for the rest of the dungeon. In which case, it doesn't actually need to go on one of our main bars. That's not an issue. So I could probably stick that on one of the things over here and it not be a problem. Or it could go in place of something like XCOG. again, depending on, you know, how many slots we've got and how many buttons they've got. I've been through and I've cut out all the tooltips, but I haven't actually looked at any of them in terms of how many we've got. There are quite a few, though. Right, this is just 3. This is our basic AoE heal, 1000 cost, cure potency 300, level 10. Yeah, that lines up with Sucker, although actually it probably lines up closer with... Yeah, so this is our Medica variant for that. So that's just going to go on 3 for AoE heals. I'll know where that is. That won't be an issue. That's our res, so that will go here. Same MP cost, same level, same range, I think. Yeah, but I'm not really worried about range. I'm worried about how the class works. Similar icons, so yeah, not going to have an issue with Egero? Something like that. Right, what's this? This is our instant cast AoE heal, level 20. Gradually... No, this is our instant cast regen AoE. Gradually restores own HP and the HP of all nearby party members. 21 seconds, 100 potency. So this is going to go... Probably... Yeah, probably that's going to be in place of Whispering Dawn, isn't it? 120 potency. 60. 100 potency, yeah. But again, potencies don't make any difference whatsoever because they're all going to get changed. So yeah, that's going to go in place of Whispering Dawn. That's a nice easy one to remember on 8. Base action damage and HP restoration by 10% for Maim and Mend at level 20. That's our first trait. Phlegma. Phlegma? I suppose it's probably Phlegma. 45 second instant cast, 400 MP. Deals unaspected damage to target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 360 for the first enemy and 30%. Restores HP to targets under the effects of Guardian granted by you. 2 charges. Does not show a recast timer with any other action. Okay, so a 2 charged AoE heal on a 45 second charge time does damage. So it's an AoE damage spell on a targeted enemy that also restores HP to you. So that's going to want to go on the damage side of things, and I suspect therefore I'd probably place it on Control 2, which is where I've currently got Fey Blessing, because that's an AoE as well, except that this one is an AoE damage. I've also noted that we don't yet, at level 26, have a dot, but one may arrive. Yeah, so I suspect Control 2 for that. But again, it's got the additional healing thing should we need it. It could also potentially go on Control 6. That's an interesting ability, though. Okay, Eucrasia. Augments certain offensive and healing magic actions. Dosis is upgraded to Eucrasian Dosis. Diagnosis is upgraded to Eucrasian Diagnosis. Prognosis is upgraded to Eucrasian Prognosis. So this is an instant cast buff. Is this a stance? Does this switch things? Yeah, so Diagnosis is our basic heal. Dosis is our basic nuke. And Prognosis is our AoE. It looks like a stance, doesn't it? So it turns our nuke, single target and AoE heals to an upgraded version. So Eucrasian Dosis. Oh, this is where the dot comes in. Interesting. Oh yeah, so these aren't assigned to a hotbar. They'll just change. So I can actually save myself space here, because that will turn into the dot when this stance is on. And then our single target heal will turn into a barrier version. Affects a magical barrier which nullifies damage equal to 20% of the amount of HP restored. That's a lot, actually. So this would replace... Yeah. So that will double up buttons. So the Eucrasia button has got to be somewhere that's really obvious and really easy to get to. And I'll probably stick it down here instead of Etherflow. It's got to be somewhere handy that it's not going to be too difficult to get to. Because you are going to want to pop in and out of it. Because you're not going to want to spam Eucrasian Dosis. You're going to want to put that on for its 30-second duration. And then switch back to using the Nuke. Because that restores HP on top, I assume, of that. I assume, but I may be wrong. Oh no, that will just do it once. Yeah, it's not a regen effect. It will do damage over time, very low damage over time, but damage over time, and it will grant a single potency cure, I think, or maybe it is spread out. I don't know, because that would be a nice little. That's basically regen, isn't it? And that is our. Yeah, so that's our AoE version of Sucker. Well, that is Sucker, isn't it? So that's interesting, because actually that would mean that we've got one fewer button here. Because our cure would turn into our barrier cure, and our AoE would turn into our barrier AoE. It's possible actually then that I just put Eucrasia here, because we only need the one button, don't we? We've got our heal and our barrier heal. We've got our AoE and our barrier AoE. We don't have two separate spells for barrier heal and single target heal. We've just got one button and then a toggle that turns it on and off. That's a very interesting effect. Is it? And it is a spell as well. So whilst it's instant cast, it is still going to... Will that give us a GCD? I suspect it probably will. Let's see what else is going on here. Right, Soteria. At 90-second instant cast, doubles the cure potency of Cardian effects granted by you. 10 seconds. Right, that's going to go down here in the place of emergency tactics. So that is our oh shit button, which is going to enable us to buff up the Cardian effects. So it's not a single target, it's a 10-second duration, and that will... Thing is though, Cardian is just on the one person, isn't it? Unless there's a way of spreading it later on. Rush to a rush to targeted enemies or party members' location, unable to cast if bound. 45 seconds. So that's a gap closer on a healer. That is very much going to depend on what buttons I've got left over, frankly. It depends what our AoE DPS spell is like. Level 40 trait increases base damage and HP. Okay. Instant cast restores target's HP, massive potency, restores MP, Adder's Gall cost. What is Adder's Gall? Don't know. But that is our instant cast charge thing, so that's going to go in the place of Lustrate. And that'll get turned into a macro, just like Lustrate is. Nice and straightforward. Grants one stack of Adder's Gall automatically every 20 seconds, maximum 3 stacks. So rather than having Etherflow, it's basically Etherflow, but it automatically regens over time, as opposed to... realistically, it's the same thing, isn't it? This just means that it's going to have a constant trickle in of the resource. You're going to have to be a little bit more tactically minded for it, realistically. And that's good. 46. Okay, so Discracia is our Art of War. 5-yard radius. Yeah, 5-yard radius, 600 MP, recast, unexpected damage. Unexpected damage. Yeah, so that is our AoE spammable DPS spell, but it's got that additional effect of whoever's got Guardian on them gets healed each time it goes off. It does say it restores HP to targets under the effect of Guardian. So potentially there's a way of putting this on everybody. I don't know. That's interesting wording. Caracole reduces damage taken by self and nearby party members. 15 yards radius, 15-second duration. Cannot be stacked with Turcol, regen, potency, stores mana, adders ghoul costs. So that is an AoE. See, it looks like this is going to replace Sacred Soil, but it doesn't have a range. So it's a bubble stacked on us, potentially? Or is it going to be more like, I can't even remember what this is called, Indomitability, where it spreads out from us on a 30-second. In fact, it probably is, isn't it? That's probably our Indomitability replacement. Except that it's actually a damage mitigation buff with regen, rather, because Indomitability is Indomitability is a flat heal. That's interesting. So that's going to be used in a different way. But it does give us MP back, which is the same as similar things. Oh no, that is our Indom replacement. That is our replacement for Fire Illumination, isn't it? Increases healing magic potency, reducing magic damage taken. Reduces damage taken. Yeah, that's more a replacement for Fire Illumination. Well, I mean, they can just have their respective buttons, because I do make sure that I hit those as and when needed. Or, again, if we don't have an actual bubble ability, it can go in place of Sacred Soil instead, because that's pretty good. Summonutic Oath increases the potency of Dosis, Phlegma, and Eucrasian Dosis. What was Phlegma? Oh yes, that was our AoE Healy Nuke with its charges. Okay, so that increases the potency of our main DPS spells. Doubles the amount cured by your next healing spell, duration 30 seconds. So actually Zoe is more in line with our emergency tactics, as opposed to Soteria. Soteria could actually go down there in that case, because I strongly suspect it's not going to have. And if Guardian is only for our main focus targets, that kind of replaces Ether Pact as this regards. I appreciate that this is not an exact science, and it's not going to be one-to-one. It's just to help me get my head around things. But yeah, doubles the amount cured by your next healing spell, duration 30. It's an interesting one. 90-second recast as opposed to 15 seconds on that. As I said, not going to be one-for-one. Pepsis. Restores own HP and the HP of nearby party members by removing Eucrasian Diagnosis and Eucrasian Prognosis effects granted by you. Targets not under the effect of Eucrasian Diagnosis or Eucrasian Prognosis will not be healed. Okay. So that eats our regen and... no, not our regen. That eats our barrier or AoE barrier and turns it into a fat heal every 15 seconds. But it cancels the barrier on them. And if they don't have one of those effects, they won't be healed. Why would you need to do that? Why would you... If they've got a barrier on them, why would you want to cancel said barrier? I suppose the barrier could be a stopgap, and now you actually want to heal them up fully. I mean, it's a big heal, and it's instant cast. I don't know where I'd put that. That seems very, very situational at best. Maybe Control 6? because it does seem like a situational ability. Maybe it won't play out like that, because obviously a lot of this is going to require actual play time to figure it out. Right, Physicist 2. Gradually restores own HP and the HP of all nearby party members. 20 yards, 3 minutes cooldown. 3 minutes cooldown for a buff to... For a big heal. Well, for a heal. And a buff that increases HP recovered by magic damage. No, increases HP recovered by healing magic for 10%. By 10% for 15 seconds. So that is an AoE buff. That will probably go down where Dissipation is. That's a big-ish cooldown. And that means that actually 9 and Control 9 would both have AoE heals on, which would work quite well for my muscle memory. Because then as and when I accidentally hit this one, which I will, it'll then go bleh, 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 bleh every time I try and error out, and I can remember that I'm holding down Control. Yeah, that works for me. So that's our level 60 ability. Torkoal. 45-second, reduces target's damage taken by 10%. Effect cannot be stacked with Keracol. Which was Keracol? Have we had Keracol? Yeah, it was that one. So that was the AoE at level 50. And this is a single target version at level 60. 62. So this is kind of like a mini benediction. I think this is our XCOG replacement. Yeah, I think this is probably going to go where XCOG was, unless I've already put something on XCOG. I've been recording for 25 minutes and I've got no real way of noting these things down. 64, our damage spells upgraded in potency again. 66, Toxicon. Deals unexpected damage to target and all enemies nearby it with a potency 320. Restores HP. So this is an AoE. This is a spammable AoE damage. That costs Adder's Sting. No, wait. Adder's Sting is not the same as Adder's Gall. So this is a spammable thing if we've got a particular resource. What is Adder's Sting? Oh, this is our second... This is our second resource. Gain a stack of Adder's Sting when the barrier granted by Eucrasian Diagnosis. So that is our single target. So that's our Adloquium. So when our Adlo gets broken fully, we gain a stack of Adder's Sting. So that means that you want it to break, essentially, which is not something that you'd always do otherwise. So you want to make sure your tank's shield breaks so you can get Adder's Sting. You can get 3 stacks of that. And then you can use 3 of these big fats. Just making sure... No, those were all Adder's Gall. So this is our first Adder's Sting thing, which makes sense because it's the level we get the trait. And that's a big chunky instant cast AoE. It's not point blank though. Range 25 yards, radius 5 yards. Yeah, so instant cast. Although 2.44 seconds recast. So it's proper GCD. And it heals Accardian targets. Okay. I'd probably put that down here then. Maybe where deployment tactics is. To keep the AoE things together. There's definitely going to be more moving around of stuff than I thought, to be honest. I thought I was going to be able to... I mean, a lot of the basics are going to go in obvious places. This is, again, this is the first time I've properly looked at this kind of stuff. But this doesn't have a kind of scholar equivalent. You know, scholars literally have that Art of War for their AoE, at least for now. Adder's Sting we've looked at, so that's the trait that allows when our barrier is granted, our Adlo barrier, that disappears. Okay, Heimer. Grants a barrier around self or target party member that absorbs damage equivalent to a heal of 150 potency on a 2-minute cooldown. Grants 5 stacks of Hymatanon, 30 seconds. When a barrier is completely absorbed, a stack of Hymatanon is consumed and a new barrier is applied. Also, this is more like our This is our recitation Adlo, not recitation XCOG replacement, I think, on a 2-minute cooldown. So that is our, and that's clearly going on a tank, frankly. But rather than having to press 2 buttons to recitation XCOG, that's just going to go there, I think. Only usable every 2 minutes, but as somebody who mostly does dungeon content, that's not going to be an issue, although it is level 70. So you've got to wait a while before you get that. 72. Oh, this is our single target nuke upgrade. That's our, yeah, that's our fancy, that was going there, wasn't it? That was our nuke AoE that also heals us if they've got Cardian on it for 2 charges. And yeah, so that was our Ukrainian nuke, our damage over time. So those get upgraded at 72 to the second versions of them. Yes, in fact, it says there. Dosis to Dosis 2, Phlegma to Phlegma 2, Ukrainian Dosis. Also increases the potency of Toxicon. Toxicon was, yeah, the add a sting cost one. It's not long before that it gets an upgrade, interestingly enough. Okay. Rizomata is just a resource generating buff. So that'll probably go over here somewhere. 90-second cooldown grants 1 single stack of Adder's Gall. Again, the numbers will probably change. Adder's Gall is the thing that we get automatically every 20 seconds, so it gives us an oh shit button for, oh, I don't have any more resource, I need a way of generating one quickly. Holos is an instant cast AoE heal. That's going to be interesting to find a button for. Yeah. I don't think we've got anything properly on Sacred Soil yet. Maybe we have, don't know. But yeah, that's a one-off, so every 60 seconds. So again, it's another oh shit AoE heal button. Adds an additional effect to Kerikol that grants healing over time. Yes, that was our defensive AoE. And that's where the additional effect regen comes from. So it doesn't have that automatically. It gets that at 78. So until 78, Kerikol is MP restore and just a 15-second damage reduction buff. So it becomes quite a bit pokier up at 78. Okay. Right, this is our level 80 ability. Erects a magic barrier around self and all party members near you that absorbs damage equivalent to a heal of 150 potency. Grants 5 stacks of panharmatism. So this is an AoE version of what we're going to replace that with, which was Heimer, wasn't it? So Heimer was the single target kind of recitation XCOG. This is an actual group version of it. 30 seconds. So this will be really good for raid-wide damage, like, well, I'd say Titan Extreme, but you wouldn't be able to use it in Titan Extreme, would you? Because it's level 80. Ranks 5 stacks. When the barrier is absorbed, a stack of panharmation is consumed and a new barrier is applied. When 30 seconds disappears, then you get 150 cure potency per remaining stack. So if not all your stacks break, you get a heal at the end of it. So just like XCOG, goes off at the end or gives you the heal if it ends early, this will give you barriers, but then a heal if it doesn't end early, and barriers when it does. I assume if all 5 stacks are used up, then the effect just ends and you don't get anything because you've got no stacks left. Cool ability. It will probably go close to this. It's an interesting one because I can't think of too many uses outside of raids where this will be of particular use, but in higher level dungeons, you know, this will probably be a really handy button just to fire and forget, a little bit like Medica 2 in a way. Dosis 3, Phlegma 3, Dyscrasia 3, Toxicon 2. So those are all upgrades to our... Yeah, they're upgrades to all of our offensive spells at 82, just keeping us... I mean, considering we've got to deal damage, having that damage is very useful. At 85, increases the healing amount of diagnosis to 450 and cardia to 170. Also increases the strength of barriers in the mid-80s. No way of spreading it, spreading cardio to other people though yet. 86, instant cast 60 seconds, increases HP recovery via healing actions for a party member or self by 20%. So that's a single buff. I suspect that will probably go over here as well as kind of an oh shit button, because I think we're all out of buttons now. Reduces Zoe recast time. Which was Zoe? Zoe's going back a bit. Increases the amount cured by your next healing spell. Yeah, that was one of these two, if I remember correctly. Which I possibly don't. Yeah, okay. And then Numa, which is our last one, deals unaspected damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency. This is a 3-minute cooldown. Potency 330 for the first enemy, 50% less from the remaining enemies. Stores own HP and the HP of all nearby party members and reduces damage taken by 10%. 400 cure potency, 10% damage reduction, 26 second duration for the damage mitigation. Restores HP to targets under the effect of Cardian, 170 cure potency. Does not show a recast timer with any other actions. So that is a big line nuke. 25 yards radius, 25 yards range on a 2-minute cooldown. Doesn't require a resource, so it's something that you can do on potentially every big pull in a dungeon at level 90, but no mention of anything that grants cardia to other party members. So the question is then, can this be used on multiple people? You know, if I buff somebody with cardia, well, no, because that wouldn't make sense because it's got no duration. So having its 5-second recast time would make no sense whatsoever. Yeah, that's a tricksy one. I suspect there's more to it than I am thinking, just based on the wording of the tooltips, unless there is something that I've missed. But yeah, I feel like that's for a single person and ourselves. Having gone through and read the tooltips in a lot more detail, that's definitely given me a much better idea of what things are and where they should go. I guess now I just kind of mock up based on what I've just gone through, roughly where I think I'm going to put things, and then see how many times I've accidentally used a button. That'll be fun. Let's go and do that. Okay, so after probably another hour plus editing together all of the footage, this is what I've come up with, including a few changes that I've made because I did go and watch a couple of videos from the media tour just to make sure that my understanding of things was correct, and I'm mostly correct on certain things. So on the healing side of things, we've got diagnosis on 1, which is our single target heal that can become our single target barrier heal if we hit you crazier. Keeping in mind that it's an extra second worth of cooldown, so to turn it into a barrier heal, you need 3.5 seconds realistically. Same goes for prognosis. It's either an AoE heal or an AoE barrier heal. Good abilities, not super strong, I imagine, but worth it, especially compared to Scholar. Caracol is going here. It is basically an AoE bubble, except that it's not a ground placed one. It just goes out from us to about, was it 8 yards, something like that, or 15, one of the two. Yeah, I think it was an 8-yard radius. So we run into the party, hit that, and then we can keep on going rather than people having to stay within a certain area of effect, which, as we know as healers, not every party member is capable of doing. Asuna's going to stay there on 5 as per normal. Now, Caracol, Druacol, Ixcol and Turacol are the 4 abilities. They've all got Col at the end, which helps. They're the 4 abilities that we can use Adder's Gall on. So these are the ones that spend our resources for, or one of our 2 resources, for an instant cast effect. So Druacol is basically our Lustrate, as I suspected. Single target, instant cast, decent potency, restore some MP. Ixcol is our AoE version of that. It's our AoE Indominate ability, as suspected. Now, Turacol and Heimer, I kind of feel, when I was putting this together, Heimer and Panheimer were striking me as our Excog and, you know, Recitation replacements. The thing is, what I'd forgotten when I was going through this, is that Excog never has downtime. Excog has a 45-second recast and a 45-second duration, whereas Heimer and Panheimer are 120 and 180, was it? For only 30-second duration. So realistically, they don't actually do the same thing, and you need to be much more calculating with when you actually use those. Because with Excog, especially a Recitation Excog, it's very much a fire and forget thing. You know, it will always be around when you need it. So my idea that Turacol, which was my initial idea of Turacol with its damage reduction and its single target heal, just like Druacol, my initial idea that that could be the replacement for Heimer may actually have been more on the money than I realised when I got to Heimer. That being said, I like the symmetry of Heimer and Panheimer being on the same button, the same number button, 7 and Control 7. So I will probably keep it at that. Physis was our Whispering Wind. That is fine there. I put Physis 2 here just to again keep it on the same button because that works for me. Turacol on 10 works for me. It's nice and close and available. Not going to press it accidentally and hit myself, though to be fair, I will probably macro that to do the focus targets. And the same probably for Heimer. I'll probably macro those to focus targets. That will be macroed just like Asuna to mouse over targets. And as I said earlier in the video, if you think that mouse over macros are a bad idea, well, chances are you are doing much harder content than I am. Zoe and Soteria are our 2 double potency buffs. Zoe is a single double potency heal. Whatever heal we use, it's double potency. The next one, probably combine that with... It's possible that it could be combined with some of the other things because it is healing potency. And then Soteria doubles our Cardion potency. So the tank almost certainly will get double heals as we go forwards. Cardia, I went and looked up. It is only on one person and ourselves at a time. So, yeah, it's pretty much a fire and forget unless we really want to faff around with it. So it's not quite the same as Discipline Priest, where you can make all of your heals for all of your party members. It's not quite that forgiving, but we do have a lot of AoE heals to form a vaguely similar playstyle. Now, I realised just before I started this recording of this last bit that I haven't actually put anything on Control 3. I got it there with its original kind of blank, with its original, is it Broil that I've got there on Scholar? Hadn't realised that I hadn't put anything on that. I don't know actually off the top of my head what I will put on that. It may stay as blank. Don't know. Might stick something else on it. We've got Dosis, which becomes Eucrasian Dosis once we hit Eucrasia. In fact, I might, if we stick Phlegma there, and then we put a second, that means that whichever way I'm looking at it, I'm always pressing the 2 or Control 2 to switch back and forth between them. That might actually help somebody with stupid fingers like me. That might work better. Pepsis is the thing that transforms our barriers to heals. I saw, it could have been Larry or it could have been Mr. Happy, who said that actually they liken Pepsis a little bit to emergency tactics because it's on a 15-second cooldown and it turns barriers into heals. I'm not so sure. I mean, I see the fact that it's on a short cooldown as that kind of thing, but when you've got a barrier, when you use emergency tactics, it's because you need a big heal. But if you've got a barrier on somebody already, you don't need a big heal. I suppose if they've taken a lot of damage and then you do a quick, though to be fair, if you're not in Eucrasia, then it's 3.5 seconds to get a Eucrasian diagnosis barrier off and then hit Pepsis to heal everybody. I feel like that would be massively situational, and you must not have Ixocole or Keracole or Holos or something else available at that time. It just seems very situational, although I don't know, but I've put that Control 4 because it was one of the only places that I got left. I've put Numa there, that's our capstone level 90 ability. That might get swapped with Icarus depending on how it actually feels in game. We'll have to see. Holos, AoE heal. It kind of doesn't necessarily make sense there. I could swap Krasis and Holos around just to keep the AoE and the AoE heals on 9 and Control 9. That might work. Heim and Panheim I've already spoken about. Physis and Physis 2 I've already spoken about. They are separate abilities. This one just has a longer cooldown and gives you an extra bonus to healing. Crisis, plus 20% heal received. That's the same as the old Presence of Mind, isn't it? Was that the one that gave you healing, or was that the one that sped you up? I can't remember. Discracia, staying there for our AoE, just because that's why I'm used to hitting it on Scholar. Icarus, our gap closer, I've kind of put it there because then I can go from Icarus into Discracia, with very little movement of my fingers. Toxicon, if I remember correctly, has got range, so that could go anywhere, but I quite like the symmetry of that. Rizomata is over here on Alt 7. It's nothing particularly, it's quite a good ability on a 90-second cooldown, to be fair, just giving you a free resource which allows you to double cast one of these. A double cast instant AoE would be quite nice, or a double cast single target AoE, single target heal rather, would be good. Again, it's just to help you with resources, but it doesn't need to be on one of the main things. And likewise, Cardia and Agero, they are quite fine being over there. So that's, you know, it's rough. Everything else, like Lucid Dreaming is there. Obviously, I can take off Heal, I think that is. I'd forgotten that I'd left that on. Rescue can stay there because, as I said, it never gets hit. Surecast, Swiftcast, etc., etc. But I feel like that is the layout that is going to make the most sense to me, just to start off with when it comes to wanting to leap straight into content and saying, okay, I'm healing a party for the first time with this job. This is roughly what I can do. That being said, almost certainly the first things that I'm going to do when I actually get to try out Sage is I am going to go into Deep Dungeon and work it through that way. But this kind of means that I don't have to, because I've at least found some of the analogies. So that was my process. Hopefully that will, especially if you are a scholar thinking of switching over to Sage, I kind of feel like Scholar is still going to be, as much as I love the Discipline Priest in WoW, it has always been my favourite healing style, with Tree Druid a strong second. As much as I like the Discipline Priest, I do feel like Scholar is just going to be more my speed, frankly. I kind of feel like, because of how straightforward Scholar is, it's just, and how experienced I am at playing it, I feel like it's going to be more my thing. I kind of feel like Eucrasia is going to make this stuff in particular quite fiddly. You know, it's an extra button press for really no massive benefits, as compared to Scholar, who has just got Physic, Adlo, Succor, Lustrate. It feels maybe it has an added layer of complexity to it, and I'm wondering whether realistically it can outshine, especially in the content that I do. Let's put it this way. I feel like I feel like Sage is going to have exactly the same issues for barrier healing that I felt like Astrologian did for single target healing. I felt that Astro was weaker than White Mage, and yet more complicated to play than White Mage. I remember getting to the Katana Ravel in Shadowbringers on White Mage and on Astrologian, and just finding White Mage so much easier and more powerful in comparison to Astrologian. I just felt that their heals just weren't as strong. And hopefully with the rework of Astro for Endwalker, things will be different, because, I like to keep all of the healers and all of the tanks at max level. But with Sage, I like the idea of getting your Cardia heals for DPSing, but Scholar, you've got EOS doing smart targeting. So rather than having to switch out your Cardia to a different person so that they can get the benefits of your DPS and then switch it back to your main tank or whatever, you just let EOS do what she does best, which is smart target the person with the lowest health and cast Embrace on them. And I just feel like, for a lazy ass individual such as myself, I kind of feel like, as cool and interesting as Sage looks, that I'll probably just end up going back to Scholar. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what the balancing is like. But anyway, that is more than enough of this video. I hope you've enjoyed my deep dive into what the hell is Sage, what can it do. If there's anything that I've got wrong, and there almost certainly is, I may even be using massively outdated tooltips in terms of what they do. I know that the potencies are going to change. I'm not bothered about that. It's what the abilities themselves do. If I've got anything massively wrong, let me know. If you see some different parallels between this and Scholar, again, let me know down in the comments below how you would line up these abilities. It's been an interesting mental exercise, and I kind of need those every now and again to keep my brain working. So, until next time, have yourselves a fabulous day, folks. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, give it a like, and maybe hit the subscribe notification-y thing to get more Endwalker content, which will be coming soon-ish. I may even have to remake this video if they bring out the game guide and it's suddenly very different, but we'll see. Thank you very much for watching. Toodlepip. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.